All right, so we're going to show how to take a rendering and add entourage to it using Photoshop's AI tools. So I'm going to open an image. We'll take an existing rendering here, and we're going to add people to the scene. We'll add some trees and things like that. So when you first open Photoshop, you'll see that there's this toolbar that comes up. This is the kind of heads-up display that shows up. You can basically select this rectangle tool and add any entourage that you want using the AI prompt generator. So if I wanted to add people to this, I could select a rectangle kind of where I want them, and going to Generative Fill, click on that, and you just type in what you want to see. So I'm going to say children playing in snow. And so what it's going to do is it's going to take the existing background that you have. It'll take, from its image model of millions of different images of children playing in snow, it'll create a version of that you can use. All right, so not always accurate. You're going to have to do a few tests to get a result that makes sense. But you are noticing, it created this layer here. And if I were to move this, it generated all of this. So it's taking context clues and kind of the shadows and trying to do its best to generate that image. I'm going to hit Control-Z to move it back. But it's going to create a new layer that you can then control. So for example, let's say I liked this, and this worked out. I wanted to mask out this portion of it or hide this. You can click on, it creates a masking layer for it here, which you can then use the paintbrush tool. I'm going to change the size, and if this is set to black, it's going to erase that portion of the image. And when you're masking, and again, I clicked on this masking layer, when you use the masking layer, it's not actually erasing it, it's just masking it. So if I want to bring that back, I can switch this to white paintbrush and I can bring it back. So there's really no good reason to use the eraser tool in Photoshop. You can always just mask the image. That way you always have the ability to bring it back later. Okay, so that's just the paintbrush, and again, it generates this mask. You can create an image mask by going to this layer masks here. And if you had to do that for some other reason, that's where you would do it. But just make sure you've clicked on that, because if I click on this and go to the paintbrush, it's just going to paint normally. All right, so again, I've added an image. Let's say I don't like this image. There's 3 options, so I can try the other ones. Okay, and some of these, maybe the scale will be off, maybe, it'll be worth regenerating. So I can hit generate again. All right, so some more kids. And always, check the scale, make sure it's something you're looking for. Look at the scale of them versus the size of that door. It's a little large. All right, so it'll take a few tests. You'll have to iterate a little bit. Again, scale is off, scale is off. So it'll take a little bit of work, but let's say this is your image. Photoshop has some good tools for character selection and kind of selecting a subject matter. So if you go to Object Selection tool and do this, it should understand what the object is. Yeah, so it's it's doing that. I can add this. So now I've selected just the kids. And if I wanted to create an image mask and basically cut them out, move them independently of the rest of this kind of rectangle image, I can select them and actually create a new layer mask. So if I have them selected and do this, oops. First, what I'm going to do, I'm going to delete this mask and create a new layer mask with that. And so now I can just independently move them. Okay, so when you have a subject selected and then you click this add layer mask, it'll automatically mask out everything that wasn't selected. And then again, if I wanted to bring that back, I would just go to the paintbrush tool, make sure I've selected the layer mask, and I can click on white, and white will bring all of that back. So now when I move this, it's moving that with it. Okay, but again, I don't want that. You know, and you can use color gradient. So if I use gray, it'll kind of bring some of it back with maybe 50% opacity. So you can play with the different, you know, paintbrush techniques for masking with that. All right, so now I can move these kids independently. I'll move them a little bit closer to the scene, to the camera, so that the scale now makes a little bit more sense. You know, but now since I moved it, maybe there is no shadow here. So what I do to create shadow, I'm going to hold Alt and drag. That's going to duplicate the layer and the layer mask. I can right click this and say convert or mask all objects. Oops, that's not what I wanted. I can do this convert to smart object. So now this is a smart object. I think it helps with scaling and things, but I can Control L and I can make this just like a black silhouette image to turn this into a shadow, and I can change the opacity down. This is the way I typically make shadows with people. And then if you go to Edit, Transform, you can go to Distort. It'll turn off that smart object, and I can distort this to match the shadow on the ground. So figure out the direction of the sunlight and you can match that. I'm going to bring the opacity up a little bit. Okay, so now they have some shadow. So I can do the same thing with other entourage that I need in the scene. So again, I'm just going to select this, say Generative Fill, tree with snow on branches. You can say pine tree. It'll generate. And also be cognizant of how much you've selected too, because it has to fit within that. So this tree is going to be a little bit small. Kind of cartoon-like. This is maybe the best option. And again, it hasn't done a great job of kind of placing it in its context here, so you probably have to do that same strategy for shadow. But you know, when it comes to the alternative of finding a Photoshop tree and dropping it in and making sure that works, this is much more direct. It can be more specific to what you're looking for. I could even say, you know, if I select all of this, if I say snow on roof, if I wanted to add more snow, we can experiment and see what that comes up with. You know, it may try to modify the roof design a little bit. I'm not really sure, but we'll see what happens. Yeah, it's changing the roof design here. Yeah, so that may not be what we want. And again, if it's going to create a new layer for that, so you can just turn that layer off if it's not something you like. Let's say I want to do flock of birds, enter. Pretty good. Try that, maybe a little better. Yeah, so I'm happy with that.